Hello and welcome to another weekly Royal Reviewer live chat. Now, just like last week, I got into the habit of opening the chat window before I come on live. So I can see you all straight away. I can see Will Dawson is there. I can see Nina, who says, hello, I thought I was late, but happy to find it starting at 6 p.m. for you, 10 o'clock GMT in the UK here where I am. We do have a time change tonight, well, tomorrow, but technically you could say tonight. So adjust your clocks for next week. Nina has a Dr. Pepper. And Will Dawson says, I hope you don't start a rivalry with the Mr. Pibb people. Who's Mr. Pibb? Killer Black says, hi everyone from Florida. No, Kelly Black rather, not Killer, Kelly. Jamie says, hello and welcome to another video. Hello, Jamie. Hello to Tim. And hello to Steve. But you're watching on your TV tonight. And Tim says, oh, that's why it's 6 p.m. here. I was wondering. Well, actually, our time hasn't changed yet in the UK. It changes at 1 a.m. On Sunday, 1 a.m. in the morning, obviously. So I say that the time changes tonight, but technically it's very early on tomorrow. So I'm not sure whether that affects the time where you are, but to me, it's the same time. It's 10 o'clock as usual. Susan has joined us from Winnipeg in Manitoba. And Rebecca Dean says, watching on your phone this morning, and you're still in bed, and it's 6 a.m. where you are too. And you say, great shirt. Well, thank you very much. It's new. And for those of you who are not in the UK, we've had a very wonderful couple of days worth of weather. We've not had rain. So today I was in the garden and it felt like the joys of spring. So I thought I would wear something to represent the spring. And of course, we have the Queen's flower basket brooch as well to go with the whole theme. Jen says, hello from Richlands, North Carolina. Hello to everyone in Richlands, North Carolina. Annette says, so sorry I missed it. Is it the end? No, it's the beginning. You haven't missed it. Dawn says, hi, made it this week. Hope everyone had a great week. Yes, I hope you all had a fabulous, voluptuous week, as always. Freya Baldwin-Stewart says, I was working late, but I'm taking a lengthy break to tune in for this. Well, thank you very much for taking an extra long break just for us. Jamie says, nice shirt, matches a brooch. It does, that was the intention. Van Algor says, hi Elliot, I have my tea in my hand. You're looking wonderful with the flower basket brooch, I see. Thank you very much. And Jamie said, yes, great weather in Ireland too. I'm glad to see more people are getting some of the nice weather too. And for Tim, it's 74 more days until you arrive in London. I'm also planning a trip to London, but this is for August for my birthday. So perhaps you could suggest one or two things that you'd really like me to see and to film in and around London. What attraction would you like me to cover? What would you like me to vlog about? Nina says, you're wearing my favourite brooch. I really love this one too. And Rebecca says, I'm usually Beck Terry. Ah, of course, Rebecca Terry. I should have known. Anna says, hi everyone. I was doing some job, but at least you're listening. You're doing a job, but at least you're listening. You're looking very smart and well done. Great outlook. And hello to all the cats. Thank you very much. Annette says, no wait, sounds like the beginning. Yes, it is the beginning. This is the beginning of the chat. So for at least the next hour, we have been doing longer each week. So usually about an hour and 20 minutes, I will be here taking all of your questions. For those guys who are new or you've just tuned in, the format is really simple. You just ask me any royal related question in the chat box, conversation box, whatever you can see, and I will answer it as best I can. Steve says, do I have phone for tweets tonight? Yes, I have my new phone. I have my new phone here, which has lots of storage to make lots more videos on. which is why I bought it. So no more 60 attempts at uploads. This does it really quick. It's amazing. So yes, I have my phone. So if you want to send me anything on Twitter, royal_reviewer on Twitter, I will pick it up throughout the chat. I will keep checking back, and I will see whatever pictures or any tweets you want to send me. Jamie says, go and see Westminster Abbey. Yes, that is one of the things that I did actually have on my personal list of things that I wanted to see. So yes, I think Westminster Abbey I will definitely see. I'm not sure how much you will be able to film or even photograph inside it, but whatever I can, I will try and get. Cats for me says, hi Elliot, and hello to everyone. Hello Cats. Tim says, film the Queen's coronation route from 1953. That would be interesting. That really would. I was also thinking maybe the bus tours, because they tell quite a lot of information about London. I could possibly film one of the bus tours. And Jamie says, and the Kensington Palace exhibition. That's the Diana Dresses exhibition, which I made some videos about. And yes, that was another one on my list that I really wanted to go and do. Will says, what's the status on Beatrice and Brooks Bank? That's her fiance. I feel like they're stalling. Well, yeah, I think they are kind of stalling. I think we would have had an announcement earlier if it hadn't been broken to the media so soon. A journalist in the UK had a bit of an exclusive scoop on the story, and I think they put the announcement back. I think that they want to release it in their own time. However, I do think the relationship is very serious. I do think they are at that stage, but I think, you know, they are just playing the media a little bit at their game, and of course they want it their way. So I think a little bit longer, and we will see some kind of announcement. Caroline says, hello Elliot. Hi Caroline. You finally got the book. It's late, but you started reading it this week. Yes. That would be the Margaret Rhodes book, The Final Curtsey, which is our book club book. I haven't quite finished the book this week, but for next week we'll be starting Backstairs Billy. So hopefully, if you've got Backstairs Billy, start reading it and we can review it next week. And also the finishing touches to the Margaret Rhodes book. So an extra week for everyone and a little bit of reading of Backstairs Billy, perhaps the first chapter. Tim says, yes, go see Diana's exhibit. Jen says, nice voice. Thank you very much. Kelly says, please set up a PO box so we can send you birthday cards. You know what, that's a good idea. I think perhaps I should. I'll have to look into how to do it. Does anyone know if it's easy? Do I just visit my local post office, perhaps? Or perhaps the sorting office maybe might do it. Freya says, my favourite gift shop in London is on Baker Street next to the Sherlock Holmes statue. They always go there with all tourists. I haven't been to that one, but I'll have to take a look. My favourite gift shop was actually the Kensington Palace gift shop because it was so extensive. It had most of the Royal Collection collection of gifts. So I really enjoyed that one. Tim says, the silly American tabloids at Walmart today had magazines saying that Prince Harry was the father of Catherine's new baby. You just laughed and walked off. I can see why. Why did they print such rubbish? I have no idea. Obviously, that is not true. And that was just designed to get some sales, although I don't know why anyone would buy it. It's so obviously fake. Definitely fake news. I know we hear that saying a lot recently, but that is the very definition of fake news. Dawn says, yes, she agrees about the Diana exhibit. And Nancy says, when you're in London, would it be fun for you to film a day in the royal shops? I could do some royal shops. Yes, I could. And I could show you all the merchandise and the prices. Because of course you can order a lot of these things online, but lots of people like to look and see them for real. So I could do that for you, yes. That would be another good idea. Definitely royal shops. Tim says, no, you can't film anything in the Abbey. They'll make you turn it off. Well, that's kind of what I thought. Of course, I can get some exterior shots of the Abbey, and I can tell you about it when I get back to my room about what I saw. And perhaps I may be able to get the odd sneaky photo. I don't know. Maybe I can try. I'll try and get something. Dawn says, any word yet on the statue for Diana? No. In a simple answer, no. It's still at the committee stage, although I think they need to get a bit of a move on, because obviously the anniversary is in August. So, you know, unless they're going to sort of announce it this year for it to be completed next year, they need to get a bit of a shift on. Maybe they are a bit more advanced, but they haven't released anything yet. But as soon as I know, I will, of course, let you guys know first. You're always my first points of call. Jen says, we all know that Prince Harry is not with Markle. She's back in the UK. The last I heard, she was back over in the UK. I think she did something with some kind of filming with Suits for a week or two. And she's back in the UK with Harry, as far as I'm aware. That is her movements. Jamie says, yes, the day in the royal shops would be really good. And you're on chapter 6 of Backstairs Video. Wow, you're a really quick reader, Jamie. And Jamie says, you need to visit your local post office. That would be really good. Yes, I think that would probably be my first point of call for a PO box, which I will look into. Junior says, you didn't follow me back on Twitter. That's not very royal. I have lots of people following me. I mean, not as many as some people have on Twitter. I only have about 76 followers. So please, if you haven't followed me already on Twitter, please do. But no, I haven't followed lots and lots of people that follow me on Twitter, because I use that as one of my sources of information to get current information really quick. If something's happened, it's usually on Twitter. So all I want to see on my newsfeed is royal information. So I haven't followed a lot of people. If you look at my follow list, it's all sort of royal reporters or the official Buckingham Palace Twitter account, or Clarence House or Kensington Palace, so that when I look quickly, I can just see royal stuff. So if I haven't followed you, it's nothing personal. It's just because when I log on, I want to see royal things. But of course, you can tweet me anything individually. I will get that and I will reply to it. Of course I will. Happy says, England is the country, Great Britain is the island, UK is all the British territories of Wales, England, North Ireland and Scotland. And yes, England is the country that I am from. Great Britain is the whole lot. Yes, and the United Kingdom is the Principality of Wales, Scotland, England and Northern Ireland. Dawnmore says, Tim, you didn't pick up the magazine and sit in the middle of an aisle and read it right away. And Jen says, fake news is Meghan Markle is but with Prince Harry. I definitely think Meghan is with Harry. They are based at Kensington Palace. They were, I'm sure I saw a photograph of them together taken this week. But only one photo, so it wasn't worth doing a video over. And Susan agrees, a trip to the shops. And Steve says, just looked, you can set up a PO box online or over the phone at the Royal Mail website. I will definitely look into that. And I love that Steve is always there ready with the Google to look up some. I love Steve on fact check. It's really good to have. Freya says, if you go to the Tower, I would suggest going to the Minories pub, which is just down the street. I eat there all too often. It's delicious. I did go to the Tower the last time I was in London, but because I wasn't doing the channel at that time, I didn't film. I got a few photos, but I didn't actually film anything. So I doubt I'll go back to the Tower next time, but I will probably go to the area and I could look out for that pub. Will says, do you think Mark will continue to go by Megan or instead go by her first name Rachel? I think she'll change back to Rachel if she does indeed marry Harry. That rhymes. Yes, I think she will return to Rachel as her married name. And Jamie says, what do you think of my new Twitter profile picture? You know what? I will go on Twitter now and have a look. So if you want to tweet me anything, please do. Vanal says, I have received my copy of Access Billy, but haven't started it yet. I will now that I have finished the final curtsey. Aha! I have a tweet. And it's me, but I'm looking very, very, very white. So that tells me that the light in front of me is a little bit strong and I need to possibly readjust. Oh no, it's not, I'm fine. I've just looked back, I'm fine. On the photo, I look really, really white. I'm not sure if you can see, but my face looks like a ghost. But I've checked on the normal one and I'm fine. Please tell me if I do go really ghostly white. It is my light, and I can make it go back to normal. But I need to know. So let me see. Jamie has a new profile photo. Oh, it is the Queen with Princess Anne as a child. I love it, and it's very stylish in black and white. Okay, Will says, what has the Queen's response been to the death of Martin McGuinness? I think the palace did issue a statement, but of course it's not going to be very overflowing. You know, a lot in the media wasn't said about his early part of his life. I mean, a lot was said about his later life and his involvement with the peace process. But a lot, of course, you know, perhaps wasn't said about his involvement with there not being much peace. So I think for a balanced approach, you know, he's one of those characters that are going to divide opinion. You know, it's one of those things of, you know, hero or villain. People are going to have different opinions. And I think, of course, you know, the Queen is going to sail very non-politically through this. Of course, she did meet him. She did shake his hand. How many years ago? Maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that kind of said it all. And it represented that she wants to move on. And I think that is probably her personal feelings as well as political too. And Noreen says, great look this week. Thank you, Noreen. I'm just going to scroll up to catch up rather with some of these comments. Happy says, thank you, always confused about the proper names. And Freya says, which royal bride had the best wedding dress in my opinion? Well, of course, the Princess Diana one was iconic. I mean, that's a very iconic dress. But it can also look a bit dated in today's world, although it is very fairy tale, sort of classic fairy tale. I actually very much like, I really like Catherine's. I think it's very modern and fresh looking, and I quite liked the lace. But also, I think probably my second favourite would have to be the Queen's. I really liked the Queen's one too. And yes, you can buy all of the books that we've been reading, the Margaret Rhodes book and the Backstairs Billy on Amazon, or you could try an e-reader for any good library or bookshop. Jen says he will never marry her, the Queen won't allow it. I think she probably would. As the head of the Church of England, she may not be able to attend an actual wedding of them. It's still very debatable whether they may have to have a civil ceremony. That's of course if they are getting married at all, or whether it would be in a church, whether they could get some kind of dispensation for him to get married in a church. But I'm sure the Queen wouldn't have any objection to Harry being happy. And I'm sure she would sanction a marriage if it's going to make him happy, because that's all she ever wants for her children and her grandchildren and all of her family. Will says, is Eugenie doing well? I feel bad for her. She seems to be third wheeling. As far as I'm aware, she's doing perfectly fine, and she's being involved in the various charities that she supports. So as far as I'm aware, she's fine. There hasn't been any negative press surrounding her recently. So as far as I'm aware, she's fine. And Dawn says, I've looked and it says it's not released in Canada until April the 21st. I think it's been out in the UK. This is the Backstairs Billy book for about a year now, I'm sure. And Vanel says, that's odd. I received mine 2 weeks after ordering it. And His Majesty Steve says, Frogmore House is open during August. If you can get there, it's worth going. Funnily enough, I was looking at the royal graves at Frogmore on the internet, possibly for a new video that I was going to make. So actually that's kind of fresh in my mind about Frogmore, and I would indeed like to visit. And one of the things that I found quite interesting when I was looking at Frogmore on the internet was that the Duke and Duchess of Windsor are actually right over in the corner, away from all the other royal graves. So even in death, somebody, you know, who knows, perhaps the Queen Mother, ordered that their graves be put on the outskirts, on the peripheral of the royal graveyard. So just as in life, they ended up being on the peripheral in death. And that was going to be one of the things I was going to talk about in an upcoming video. So stay tuned for that one. Annette says, is Zara Phillips' father a horseman as well as Princess Anne? The video was precious with the children. That's the video I put out a couple of hours ago. It's actually at the Gapcombe Horse Trials, which is a yearly event. It's on Princess Anne's country estate in Gloucestershire. Zara was competing. Mike Tyndall was there with Mia, Savannah and Isla Phillips were there too, with Autumn Phillips and Peter Phillips. So it was a big family day out. All of Princess Anne's grandchildren were there, so she looked very happy as well. So it was a big, massive day out. Zara's father, I mean, I think all of them ride, but he's not a competitor. I don't think he actually competes in anything. So please go and watch that video. The pictures are really amazing. Susan says, someone please fill me in on the books that are being discussed. We're currently reading or have read Margaret Rhodes' The Final Curtsey, which was by the Queen's cousin, and we've either obtained or are getting or are starting to read the new book, which is Backstairs Billy, The Life of William Talon, the Queen Mother's favourite manservant. Freya says, if the Duke of Edinburgh were to outlive the Queen, where would he live? Well, I would imagine he wouldn't move very far. I mean, you know, what family would move, you know, a 95, 96-year-old relative too far? He would probably stay living at the palace, or he may even retire to Windsor. The likelihood is he'd go to Windsor and split his time between Windsor and Sandringham, possibly Balmoral too. Because obviously the new king, King Charles or King George the 7th, as we think he might be, would be in the palace, but it wouldn't make too much difference if he was there at the same time as Charles. Rebecca says, I think Catherine's dress was very similar to Princess Grace's. It was actually very well spotted. And Freya says, Meghan wasn't married in the church the first time, so I don't see her divorce being an issue. Oh, I didn't know that actually. So she wasn't married in a church. That may make all the difference. That's a very interesting fact. Thank you for pointing that out to me. And Annette says, I was so surprised at Kate's wedding dress, or Catherine. It was remarkably like mine, apart from the train, from 1981. Guess I was ahead of my time. I guess you were. Will says, I want Prince Andrew to get a girlfriend. I still think he's seeing the Duchess of York, or Sarah, the Duchess of York. I still think they have some kind of relationship going on. But you'd like to see him dating Jemima Goldsmith. They would be a cute couple, they would, but I still think he's seeing Sarah. Caroline says, I was glad to see your latest video about Patricia Routledge. Yes, Hyacinth Bouquet has been made a Dame. She received a DBE, which was presented to her by Prince Charles on behalf of the Queen. It is a UK honour. So she's now known as Dame Patricia Routledge, or Patricia Routledge DBE. So that's amazing. She's one of my favourite actresses of my favourite sitcom, Keeping Up Appearances. Please watch that video. There are amazing pictures of her receiving the honour and lots of pictures of her as Hyacinth, which I put at the end of the video. I really loved looking back at them, and I hope you do too. And Shaffer says, very glad to see your video again. Thank you very much. Jamie's got his Coke, the drink that is. Jen says, Markle did not stay married to her ex very long, and she's after his money. People's motives are always different in relationships, but I do believe that Meghan's is genuine. Some people might not believe that, and I know, Jen, from the comments that you've been making, you are not a Meghan fan, and you don't think the relationship is true, but I really do. I do think it is true and genuine. She's a very well educated girl. Yes, she's had a past. She's been married previously, and that didn't work out. She's done lots to get herself to where she is. She certainly is not a wallflower. She's used to media attention, but she supports lots of charities, and she has lots of very similar interests to Prince Harry, and she makes him happy. And to me, that's all that matters. And I do think it is genuine and very serious. Steve says, that's right, I have a photo of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor's grave somewhere. I will try and dig it out for a future chat. By the way, I'm Steve's tag, just changed. Yes, I did realise that was still you, but I really do like the new name, His Majesty Steve. Yes, I would love to see the picture. The ones on the internet aren't terribly clear, but yes, it's just really interesting to see that they're very much out on the peripheral. Shaffer says, Prince was very handsome as well as King George VI. Yes, Prince Harry definitely is very handsome. And I think he does look a little bit like King George VI. In fact, Charles is looking quite a lot like King George VI. And Jen says, I'm not jealous of no one. I don't think I said anyone was jealous of anyone. I think, Will says a lot of people on this thread are jealous of Meghan. I don't know. Some people just don't like her because she's got a past. I think this notion that, you know, a royal prince has to marry someone who hasn't had a past, who is, you know, virginal, who is basically just come from nowhere, that notion, I think, has gone. I don't think people expect that anymore. And Shaffer says Prince Philip is very handsome. He was indeed, and Prince Harry does look a lot like Prince Philip when he was younger too. Norman says, I've been reading the Duchess of Windsor's memoirs. The Heart Has Its Reasons. I haven't read that one. Maybe that could be a future book club read. It's surprising how open she is about her life. Well, in that case, if she's very open, I would love to read it. So perhaps that could be our next book after Backstairs Billy. Deborah says, Jen, are you interested in dating Harry? Meghan is beautiful and makes her own money. Harry knows gold diggers. I would have to agree with you, Deborah. I think, you know, being in that life, being surrounded by people who are people pleasers and people who are after you for what they can get, I think you become acutely aware of who is genuine and who is not. So I think the fact that he's with her shows that he knows that she's genuine. Freya says, Meghan is very wealthy. being on a popular television show. She's in no need of more money, especially money that has strings attached, like the civil list. But it's now no longer the civil list; it's the payment from the Crown Estates. So they get a percentage each year from the Crown Estates on the profits of the Crown Estates, that is. But yes, she doesn't need any more money. She doesn't need his money. She has her own money. But I think she'll be happy to give up her acting career to be with Harry. Annette says, yes, I think Sarah and Andrew are ex-spouses with benefits. I would agree. They go well together. They just need to grow up in their own time. I would love to dearly for them to get back together, and I think it would probably suit Sarah quite well to do so. Of course, she'd have to give up her external business interests, but she could devote time to charitable organisations and not have to worry about making her own money. Jen says, I've been supporting his charity. Well done, of which there are many. So please, if you feel like supporting one of the Royal charities, please do go and have a look, research, and find one that you have a good feeling about, that you really want to support. Noreen says, when is your birthday, Elliot? My birthday is in August, and it's the same as the Queen Mother's, the late Queen Mother's. It's August the 4th. And the same as Meghan Markle's. Caroline says, I agree with you. I still watch it here in the States on Saturday evenings. She played Hyacinth so well, yes. Patricia Routledge is amazing and a British national treasure. Nina says, I'm interested in how the royal family is doing after the terrorist attack. The Queen cancelled an engagement at the Met Office, which was supposed to go ahead the day after the attack. She postponed it not out of fear. I mean, bearing in mind, this is a woman who lived through the Blitz, and she didn't cancel it for that reason. She cancelled it because she knew that the police were needed elsewhere. And to have a royal visit would have taken a lot of police resources away from where they needed to be. So I think it was very, very well handled by the royals and the Queen herself. So the visit has been rescheduled and will go ahead as planned, but a little bit later. And of course, they tweeted their condolences to the families and Prince Charles. I did a video on this. He met victims of the terrorist attack, and he went to the hospital where they were treated. So I think they've handled it extremely well. Please watch that video because it's rather touching. Jamie says, I ordered 2 more books, Dressing the Queen and Buckingham Palace and Illustrated History. I think I have the Buckingham Palace Illustrated History one. I've got so many books, that's why I say I think I have. But I think I have. And of course I have the Dressing the Queen. It's amazing. If you haven't got that one, please do. Steve says, the virginal no-pass criteria was not a good basis for Charles and Diana. I agree, and I don't think we necessarily need to have that as a criteria in today's modern world. It doesn't make a relationship any less valid. Jamie says, Harry would have been able to spot if Meghan was a gold digger from a mile off. I completely agree. And Jamie says it's called the Sovereign's Grant. Yes, of course it is. And the Sovereign Grant is the profits on the Crown Estates. Noreen says, I think the latest book, Game of Crowns, is sensationalist nonsense. I haven't heard of that book. Who wrote it? What's it about? Will says, I read that Andrew and Sarah are waiting until the Queen dies to remarry. Possibly. I'm not sure where that would have come from, where that little bit of insight came from. But it's a possibility. I mean, I certainly can't say that that's false. It sounds like it could be a logical thought process. And Jen says, once an actress, always one. That's one way of looking at Meghan. And of course, we welcome all views on Royal Reviewer. Joanne says, hello, do you think that the reports stating that Camilla is against Meghan are true? No, I think that's another load of nonsense. Why wouldn't she be? I mean, Camilla of all people, why would she not be supportive of Meghan? And Joanne continues, I too would love to see Andrew and Sarah get back together. I think they're made for each other. Noreen says, I think Andrew and Sarah never stopped loving each other. I think it was the system that put unbearable pressure on them. Again, I would quite agree. A lot of you are saying some amazing statements tonight that I really agree with. So yes, I think the pressure on her was too great. But I think time out of the spotlight and actually seeing how hard it is to survive on your own financially, so to speak, may in the future prove the reason for her getting back together, as well as love, of course. Nancy says, I very much enjoyed your Routledge video. She's a great actress. Did you see her in 3 Portraits? No, I didn't, but I've seen pictures of that. Will says, when will the Queen knight the Spice Girls? Dame Scary, Dame Sporty, Dame Posh, Dame Baby, and Dame Ginger. I think Posh narrowly missed out on one that she could have got. Well, she could have been called Lady Victoria or Lady Beckham if her husband David Beckham would have got one, but David kind of messed things up on that score. I don't know. I think they would have to. I think if they did get one, it would be in the future, and they would have to have committed themselves to a lifetime of dedication to some kind of public service or charity work that they would want to do. So possibly, but not yet, but possibly in the future sometime. Annette says it's more a status and position issue with Meghan. She doesn't need the money. He loves her. She's not supporting questionable issues. Yes, I think she definitely makes him happy, and I wish her and him all the best. Julia says Meghan's not after money. She's after elite status. And Jamie says, ridiculous when people say that the Queen is getting paid by the government and doesn't actually do anything, makes me absolutely furious. I completely agree again. The Queen does so much for this country and has done, for the entire length of her reign. Nobody has done more for this country than her. Of course, she's the only one in the royal family who has an official role that's outlined. No other member of the royal family has an official role, not even Prince Charles. They just support the monarch, in this case, the Queen. So they all do a really good job. And one of the comments that I was reading on one of my videos was about how William has got £16,000 a year to send George to a private school. And I kind of pointed out that, well, actually, people often forget that he's independently wealthy from his mother's estate. All the inheritance that he was left from his mother, he now has. He now has his half of that. So, of course, he is independently wealthy himself, and he can fund lots of things himself. So let's not forget the video. It was a rather shock news. I mean, I put on the video shock news that Prince George had started a different school to his father. It was expected that he would go to the same chain, the Weatherby umbrella of schools, that his father went to. But no, he has gone to Thomas's Battersea School, which is actually quite a little, it's 20 odd minutes by car away from Kensington Palace. So it's a bit further out. In fact, it's over the other side of the river. But they chose a different school. So very much beating their own path, not feeling like they have to follow in the footsteps of William or Harry or his mother or his father. So I think it's a very interesting choice. So please watch that video to find out more. Now I'm just going to scroll back up because I think I've missed a few questions. If I've missed yours, don't worry, just type it again. Jamie says, I don't think Her Royal Highness is worth a lifetime of charitable service if there's no love in a relationship. Yes, I wouldn't, swap a HRH for a lifetime of being miserable. Who would? Noreen says, BBC News has just tweeted a gas explosion in Merseyside. Oh no! I hope everyone's okay, and I hope there's been no casualties or deaths. Shatter says people should appreciate Her Majesty the Queen. The world will never have such a queen ever. She is the first and last, no replacement. I certainly don't think we will see the likes of for a very long time, if not hundreds of years. Jen says only royals are allowed to marry white people. No, I disagree. I don't think that's a true statement at all. Definitely not. I mean, we have had mixed race relationships in the British aristocracy recently, and I see no reason why that couldn't extend up to the royal family. We are living in a modern, progressive world that obviously does have its troubles at the moment, but I think here in the UK, when it comes to relationships, I think as a people we are very relaxed and easygoing about mixed race relationships because they happen, and you see them more and more and more and more on the streets. When you're out in the shopping centres, you see mixed race relationships, and of course, you know, in schools, mixed race children. So I see there would be no problem whatsoever with Harry having a mixed race relationship. Let's not forget that Diana herself had mixed race relationships. Okay, Jamie says, I don't, oh, I've just read that one. In fact, I'm missing quite a few comments there. Let me see if I can scroll down. Sorry if I miss any of your comments. Okay, Steve says, I've just tweeted you the Duke of Windsor's grey photo. I will have a look in just a second. Jamie says, imagine the UK without a queen, so dull, like a pot with no flowers. That's a really great analogy. Jen says she's not a troll. And Fuzzy Puppet says, I suspect Prince Harry is pretty easy to love. I think Meghan just simply fell in love with him. I would agree. They just look like a very loved up couple, and I think it's a lot more serious than people give them credit for. And I think sometime this year we will get an announcement of a wedding for spring of next year. That's my prediction. You know, everyone's entitled to your own prediction. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit more. Freya says, why doesn't the Queen create peerages for non-royals anymore? I think the last peerage she created was the Earl of Stockton for Macmillan in 1984. I'm not sure about that one. I have never heard that one, but it's basically because there hasn't been a need. There hasn't been a need for any new creations. You know, a lot of titles revert back to the crown. They can be used. So while there are still some titles that they can give out, creating new ones probably wouldn't be an option. And as for non-royals, there just hasn't been a need, and there would probably be public questioning of it if there were. So that's probably the reason as to why. Will says, why hasn't she knighted Tony Blair? She knighted John Major. It's not technically up to her to decide who gets knighted. There is a commission which sits for peerages and honours, and they decide. And Steve said, headmaster of Thomas's Battersea is changing in September. Yes, I looked at the website too. At the moment, I think it's still Mr. Thomas, but that does change. But of course, the ethos of the school is still very much the same as it always has been. Deborah says, I'm really getting tired of Jen's comment. I love the live chat, but I don't care for bigotry. Fanal says, Elliot, what chapter are you on in the final Curtsey? I've just finished the African adventure. So of course she's been detailing Margaret Rhodes that is. She's been detailing a couple of her adventures, and one in Bhutan and one in Africa. And of course, very interesting anecdotes of times and adventures that she had. Jen says, I love the Queen. Annette says, that was me asking how they afford such a school. Oh, there you go. I forgot about the inheritance and all the investments that would have been made for them. Indeed, making the boys independently wealthy. Yes, I was just saying, a lot of people forget about that. And I think the Queen Mother, in her legacy, left some money to her grandchildren as well. So, you know, they are very wealthy themselves. We don't know exactly how much they have, because of course the amount their mother left them was in trust until they both turned 30. So that would have been invested and would have been there would have been growth on that money. So we don't know quite how much wealth they have, but they are certainly not poor, and they can afford £16,000 a year school fees. Freya says, if they denied honours to the corrupt, most titles would cease. And Shafter says, I lived in many countries. None of the queens or kings or princes has done what Her Majesty the Queen did. We must appreciate her. Fair comment. Annette says, the UK is quite a melting pot in its own right, as is the US. I can't fault that comment. I think we definitely are. Joanne says, so sorry I have to go. I've enjoyed hearing this. We'll watch the YouTube catch up later. Have a great week, everyone. Goodbye to Joanne and have a fab week. Noreen said, Lord Beth's son married a beautiful non-white, Lord Bath rather. Lord Bath, sorry, the light is so bright, I'm struggling a little bit to see the comments. Yes, Lord Bath did, and that was the aristocrat I was talking about earlier. So it does happen, and it's accepted. Yes, it may raise a few eyebrows, it may ruffle certain feathers. I don't think so much with the people, maybe their own sort of peers, but it goes ahead and life moves on, and it becomes, as soon as things become visible, they become normal. Jamie says, yes, my cousin lives in Liverpool and her sister-in-law has just put up that she's heard an explosion. Oh no, it must be really bad. I really hope that there's no casualties. Kelly says, Elliot, you are such a good person and have such an easygoing demeanour. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the kind comment. Jamie says, yes, you thought of that analogy yourself. Sorry, I am still behind with my comments. Okay, Noreen says, Elliot, when are you going to do a meet and greet? Again, that's another really interesting idea, and I think we spoke a little bit about that last week. It would have to be some kind of an occasion where we could meet up for an event, perhaps, maybe something happening, or we'd have to discuss it a bit further and see what most people could possibly make, sort of times and location. So it's an interesting idea, but lots of us come from lots of different countries all over the place. So to organise something would probably be fairly difficult. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but it would take a lot of planning. So, please message me some ideas. Jamie says, what's next book after Backstairs Billy? So I'll probably finish it this week. Yes, the African chapter was so good, I kept reading until 2 AM. So thrilling. Well, let's not get too far ahead, but the Duchess of Windsor book that was mentioned earlier seemed quite good. I would quite be interested in reading that. Kat says, have you watched any more of The Crown? I finished it. I watched all of it, and it was great, and I can't wait for the next series. Steve says, wasn't the Queen Mother in quite a lot of debt when she died? She had debts, but she had assets that could cover it. So the banks, the Royal Bank, I think, is it Coutts, the Royal Bank, allowed her to have credit, basically, because they knew that she had the assets available to pay it. and upon her death, those debts were paid. So there wasn't ever any trouble about her lavish lifestyle. Elaine says, our country is the envy of the world, and for so many reasons. I certainly think the UK has, started a little bit of a revolution in recent years, especially with Brexit. Jamie says, I wonder if she was shot in Africa, what kind of pressure would that put on the Queen? So I think I've missed a little bit of your possibly earlier conversation. Who would be shot? Are we talking about Margaret in Africa? Elaine says, my son and daughter went to a Montessori nursery and it was money well spent. Yes, that's the nursery that George and Charlotte currently go to, that George is just leaving to go on to Thomas's. Well, I'm glad that you feel that it was money well spent. I think the techniques are different to typical state schools. And the whole ethos about learning through play and the whole theory behind the Montessori practices. Deborah says, Elliot, I apologise, this forum is not about bigotry and I won't respond again to that. Don't worry, everyone is entitled to their view. As I've said, on the comment sections in my videos, people are entitled to their own view. I believe certain views and comments need to be aired so that they're out in the open and people can judge them for what they are, if that makes sense. Jamie says, yes, Elaine was jealous I couldn't put your loyal subject, just wrote your loyal supporter. Elaine says, originally Montessori was created for disabled children and they were doing so well they had an idea, why not able children have the Montessori opportunity? I would agree. Noreen says, meet and greet at Troop in the Colour. That would actually be quite a good idea, I think. Elaine says, saying this because William and Catherine have really researched the next school and the main ethos is on being kind. Yes, of course, I mentioned that in my video. That's one of their main ethos points. And of course, it's a co-ed school as well. So at Thomas's, unlike Wetherby, they educate both boys and girls. So they obviously want George and Charlotte to mix with both sexes, so that, because obviously that's what you get in society in adult life. You aren't just stuck with boys, or you aren't just with girls. Will says, I want Princess Anne to get remarried. She deserves to be happy. Who's to say she's not happy? Dawn says, a meet and greet would make me jealous. We'll watch a video from a distance. Of course, if ever that did happen, we would, of course, film it. Jamie says, I went to a Montessori nursery. So lots of people experiencing Montessori. Ranal says, I agree, Dawn. Noreen says, poor Tim Lawrence, the courtiers weren't in favour of his marrying the Princess Royal. Again, probably not so much at the time, but you can feel sorry for him, but I think he's fairly happy. I'm not entirely sure that they aren't happy. Jamie says, I was talking about Margaret, if she was shot. Yes. And of course, the Queen would have been very, upset to hear of any kind of incident happening to a relative overseas when they were doing some kind of work for the state. Annette says, I love Montessori schools. Children have a bad go if their parents have to relocate and then go into public schools. Yes, I can well imagine if you're used to one way of education and then have to change, that would be rather difficult. Shaf says, Prince George is a descendant from kings and queens. Of course. Jamie agrees, Troop in the Colour. Deborah says, Elliot, you're classy, thank you very much. And I think I've actually caught up with the comments now. Right, if I have missed any of your comments or a question, please ask it again, because I have to do a little bit of fast reading there to try and catch up. So let me check my list as usual to make sure that we have covered the things that I really want to talk about. Oh, there was one thing I had on my list, and that is that I introduced this week live videos. I found a way with my new phone, which was such an investment, to actually put live video onto videos. So now you can see Prince Harry kicking a football at one of the royal engagements he went to this week. You can see Catherine delivering her speech on motherhood and mental health. I just wondered what you thought about those videos. Do you like them? Now what all I need to find is a way to put the videos into my other videos, because I don't think the app that I use allows you to do it. Will says, I miss Mark Phillips. Of all the members of the royal family, I want him back. And Freya agrees that Mark is very dashing. Oh yes, the tweet of the graves. I was going to have a look. I will look now. And Jen says, please add me on Twitter. I haven't added people on Twitter because I like my newsfeed on there to be completely royal, so that I can get all the information that I need to help me make the videos. I mean, that's only one source of information that I use, but I like it not to be clogged. Ah, yes. Wow. Yes, so these are the graves. I'm not sure if you can quite see them. Steve tweeted me this picture, but they are very much on the outskirts, and you know, that's definitely a little bit of symbolism at work there. And I wonder who actually gave the authority for that to be done, for them to be put so much on the outskirts. I'm imagining it was probably the Queen Mother. Pure speculation, but I think probably a good guess. Felicity Puppet says, I was curious if Kensington Palace has food service for the different residents, or are they all on their own? They're on their own. I know that Princess Diana had her own kitchens with a chef. So I believe that they do have, they either have to cater for themselves or hire their own private chef. Beck Terry says you could do live Facebook feeds of your travels in London. They're always fun. Yes, that's another medium of, you know, getting the information out there. Definitely. Nina says, I loved Catherine's speech. She was lovely. And Noreen says, I miss Princess Diana the most. Shatter says, thank you for the chat. It's amazing. We can talk about our view freely. Of course, this is an open forum. You can express whatever views you want. Will says, Door swings both ways. Anne was cheating on Mark, says he was cheating on her. Again, nothing was kind of proven. Banal says, I love all your videos. Thank you very much. Jen says, Kate has such a sweet voice. Yes, I think Catherine has had vocal coaching. Some people were saying in the comment section that they like her natural voice and they don't particularly like the sort of worked on, improved voice. I think in the last video you could see a mixture of the two. So I think you kind of get the best of both worlds. And of course, if you're delivering speeches all the time, you need to have a certain level of professionalism in your delivery. And of course, she wants to make sure that the message of what she's saying gets out there, and that she's saying it in a way that people can understand it. And Terry says, yes, you can see the tweet very well. So head on over to my Twitter and you can actually click on it and zoom in as well. It was a really good picture. Steve says, I think the Duke of Windsor should have been treated as a king in death. Well, I mean, it does say that he was king on his gravestone. I have seen a close-up of it. But I do believe that, that I don't think he should have been quite stuck in a corner somewhere. Now, one interesting thought when I was looking at my Frogmore pictures was they built a great mausoleum for Queen Victoria. Do we think that Queen Elizabeth II should get something of similar stature? Should she get an elaborate mausoleum at Frogmore, like Queen Victoria, one that also Philip could be put into as well? Queen Victoria has an elaborate mausoleum. Why shouldn't Elizabeth? Or will she be married? Will she be not married? Will she be placed in one of the royal vaults? What do you think? What should happen to Queen Elizabeth in death? Vanal says, I'm getting a migraine and losing my vision, so I can only listen now. Oh no. I hope you feel better. And Elaine says there's been a huge gas explosion in the Wirral. We've just heard someone just said, and it sounds awful. Jen says, do I have Facebook? Yes. Royal Reviewer on Facebook. Steve says, I thought Catherine sounded slightly nervous. I think delivering a speech in front of all those people looking at you probably would make you seem a little bit nervous. I suppose it's not like sitting here with me looking at a screen and a camera. You know, you've actually got pairs of eyes all over the room looking at you, and I'm sure I would feel slightly nervous too. Dawn says, I love all the videos also. I watch in the evenings and catch up when I relax before I go to bed. Thank you very much. It's always interesting to see how people use my videos. Freya says, what do you think of Cressida's comments about Harry? Is she jealous? I haven't heard them. What were they and what source are they from? Again, I'm trying to work out if they could be fake or not. Caroline says, Elliot, got to say goodnight, going into New York City tonight, meeting up with friends. We'll have a really amazing time in New York. In a way, I wish I was there too. Noreen says, what did Cressida say about Harry? And Will says she was saying he ruined her acting career. Ah, you know what? I did hear these rumours. These were actually from a couple of months ago, maybe even longer. Yeah, she did say that she was finding it hard with her career because of her association with Harry. I would disagree with her. I would say that actually being with him probably opened a door into an acting career, not shut it. You know, if she's reached a plateau, it's probably because of herself. You know, you have to have a certain degree of luck and a certain amount of talent and maybe a mixture, a combination of the two, you know, to push yourself further, you know, in the acting or music careers, or, you know, so if she's hit a plateau or a brick wall, that probably says more about her than it does about Harry. Dawn says the Queen deserves the best resting place possible. Should be some place that people can pay their respects. I would agree. That's what I was getting at. I think the Queen should get some kind of mausoleum on a par to Queen Victoria's. And actually, they should probably think about commissioning it or building it now, which is why I'm going to ask that question in my Frogmore upcoming video, because I think it needs to get out there. It needs to be discussed. Steve says Queen Elizabeth should definitely have a grave befitting her length of service and stature. And Noreen says the paparazzi probably ruined Cressida's career. Freya says the Queen will probably be buried alongside her parents in George VI Chapel. That's what I was thinking, in the vault, but I think she needs something a little grander. And Freya says there are 2 open plots there. Terry says yes, an elaborate grave would be perfectly reasonable. And Annette says, won't Queen Elizabeth be enshrined in Westminster Abbey in a carved vault? Possibly, but then Queen Victoria wasn't. And if Queen Victoria got the big mausoleum. Would that be more befitting Elizabeth? I'm not entirely sure. That's why I want to put the idea out there. Freya says there's no room in Westminster Abbey. And Elaine says, I think the Queen should have an elaborate mausoleum and for Prince Philip. That's the idea that I would prefer, but who knows what the actual plans are. Bet Terry says, Jen, they are talking about you. Fuzzy Puppet says, I think Meghan and Catherine would make a great supportive pair. I think they would too. I think the media would try and put some rivalry on them, but I think, you know, together they could be quite a strong, formidable female couple. And of course, Meghan is always very open and supportive of women's rights. And I think having two, you know, powerful royal ladies together as friends would make a real impact to do with women's rights. And yes, they each have strengths to help each other and things in common. Noreen says, I think it's probably difficult during dating a royal. Everyone watching you and commenting on everything you do. I would agree. And yes, they could be BFFs. Freya says, if I had my choice, I would have her buried under the dome of St. Paul's. She'll be the first monarch interred at the new St. Paul's. That's an interesting idea. That's possibly one option. Although I have a feeling they probably already have something sorted, and probably the George VI chapel would probably be it in those two empty spaces. But I would like to see something a bit grander. So he says, very different times from when Diana and Sarah were visible together. Yes, again, there was, I think, a little bit of rivalry between the two, and they did have a big fallout. Jamie says, I think the Queen would want to be buried at Windsor, where her heart is. Another interesting idea. As I say, I'm sure the plans are already there, but who knows what they are. Okay, Dawn says, is everyone else marking Earth Hour tonight? Just wondering. Chapter says, wish Her Majesty longer health and life. Not fair, speaking about Greys in this way. I think it's important to discuss it because when the time comes and she has left us, I actually think the public would want something of quite a grand scale to mark and celebrate her life. And I think, you know, people, you know, if we don't start talking about it now, then nothing can get done in time for whenever it does happen. You know, if she lives as long as her mother, we've probably got, you know, at least 11, 12 years left to actually create something that's befitting a beloved queen. Noreen says, the Queen said she was happiest in Malta. Maybe she should be buried there. Or have a sea burial like Edwina Mabel. I don't think she will have a sea burial. That's a very outrageous suggestion. Again, very interesting to throw into the ring. But I don't think it will be a sea burial. But yes, she was very happy in Malta. Again, I don't think Malta, because it's out of England. I think it would have to be, you know, either England or Scotland. But I think it will be England somewhere. Jamie says, I find it funny that most conversations here about the Queen tend to be about her death. Yes, I mean, people with a monarchy always have one eye on the future. And of course, to get to the next step, the next monarch, you have to have a death. Fuzzy Puppet says, do you think some members of the Commonwealth will leave when the Queen passes? No, I think it will be held together by shared beliefs and shared bonds. And I think Charles will actually do quite a good job of keeping everyone together. Elaine says, I thought Prince Philip would go first, but now I'm not so sure. Who knows? Will says, Philip will bury them all. He's a stud. And Elaine says, I wonder to myself, who would cope better on their own? It's always sad when people that have been together so long and then one of them passes away. That happened to my own grandparents. My grandmother died before my granddad, who is still very much alive. My granddad is 93, going on 94 this year. And it was very sad when his life partner, my nan, lost her life. So I know how that feels. And it will be very sad for whoever is left on their own. Shatha says, I agree, not fair talking about her death in this way. It must be lots of respect from people. And Freya says, I don't think they'll leave the Commonwealth, but I'm sure there will be talk of some becoming republics. There may be talk, whether they will or not. The Queen will live forever, says Dawn. And Shatha, yes, she will live a healthy life. And Jamie, long live your majesty without Vivat Regina. I love that song. When they sung at the coronation, Vivat Regina. If you haven't listened to it, please do. It's quite rousing. And Dawn says, no, I don't want London Bridge to fall. None of us do. And then it says, I would like the Queen to have a good and lovely monument wherever she is interred, so that people can go and visit and pay their respects for years to come. She deserves to be honoured. Of course, there is the Victoria Monument outside Buckingham Palace, and perhaps Elizabeth should have something similar too. I'm not sure where it would go, but I think something similar would be appropriate. Will says, why is Diana buried on the island and not with the rest of the Spencers? Well, I heard something very interesting about Spencers. I didn't know this until recently, but the vault, the Spencers vault, was originally full of proper full-size coffins. Then I think it was Diana's grandfather, I forget which Earl Spencer he was, but whatever number Earl Spencer he was, he actually ran out of room in the church. So they had a problem. Where do they put the Spencers? So what he actually did was he had all of the coffins opened, and he actually looked inside each coffin of his relatives, and he noted that a lot of the men were quite short and they still had red beards on their corpses. This is quite grim, really. But he noticed that the beards carried on growing after the death. So that's obviously where the red hair from Harry comes from. It's from the Spencer side. So he had them all opened and he had them all cremated, and their urns were interred back into the vault, thus creating lots more space for future Spencers. Now there was some confusion or controversy or conspiracy over if Diana was on the island or not, or whether she was cremated and put in the vault. Well, let's not forget, in Diana's will it says that she wished to be buried, so you can't really go against her wishes. That would be rather, well, it would be illegal. So I don't, it's an interesting theory. To a certain degree it makes sense, up until the point where you get to it was in her will that she wished to be buried, and I don't think anyone would have gone against that. So that's just a little bit of interesting information about the Spencers and their grave vault. Elaine says, I'll stop talking about it, but my mother encouraged me to talk about it, and it's really and it's reality, and the only thing we're sure of is death. I would agree. From the minute you're born, at some point you will die. Jen says, I lost my mother 10 years ago. I'm so sorry to hear that. And Jamie says, my granddad died in 1966. I'm like, nah. Oh, your granny's 91. Wow. Now she has been a widow for nearly 51 years. That's a very long time. She must have great sadness at her loss, a very early loss. Fuzzy Puppet says, I hope the Queen does an interview in the future. The Queen doesn't do interviews. She seems so funny and interesting. It would be fun to learn more about her personality. The closest we have got to that was last year when she made a documentary where she watched her home movies. And although it wasn't an interview, you got an insight into her personality when she was sat watching with Charles. And I think that's the closest we're ever going to get to an interview with the Queen. Noreen says, I think the Queen has at least 15 years left in her. Who knows? I mean, I actually think the Queen is more healthy than the Queen Mother at the same age. So she could live longer. Steve says, I've just tweeted you a couple more Frogmore photos. I will have a look. Noreen says, I would love to visit Balmoral. Me too. That's another one on my growing list of things to visit. Beck says, I'm loving this coffin chat. It's brilliant. Create more room. Well, they do. I mean, that's, you're limited to the space. You have to create more room. Dig them up, cremate them, stick them back in. You've got more room. Problem sorted. We Brits are ever practical. Elaine says, I think the Queen showed her sense of humour when she allowed the James Bond scene. Yes. And Harry with the boom, mic drop. Freya says, I have to agree, Earl Spencer looking at dead bodies is really interesting. I actually, so you can have a bit of a morbid fascination with these kind of things. Jen says Princess Diana should still be with us. I think many people miss Diana. So I'm just logging onto my Twitter to have a look at more pictures of Frogmore because I find it really interesting. Beck says, what's the documentary called? Is it on YouTube? I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, but I think you can buy it from Amazon. It was one of the 90 celebration documentaries. I can't quite remember the title. Was it? It was about an hour and a half long. When I find it, I'll put it on Twitter. Aha. That's Dawn sent me a photo. Here's what she's doing tonight. She's doing a Harry Potter jigsaw. Hope you can see that. Looks really interesting. And you haven't got far to go on it. And Steve sent me a picture of the Queen Victoria Mausoleum, which he visited. Again, if you want a clearer view, go to my Twitter, Royal_Reviewer on Twitter. And here is the distance shot of the mausoleum. Yes, I think Queen Elizabeth should have something of similar stature. Will says, if Philip died, I would like the Queen to remarry. I doubt she would do that. And Dawn says, maybe more Spencers will be buried on the island. Possibly Harry. It's an interesting thought. But I still think it would just be for Diana. Which is quite sad, really, because she'll always be on her own. Another royal wedding, perhaps, says Will. Maybe. But I don't think for the Queen. I think Harry and Meghan next. Dawn says, the tribute to the Queen by her family, the Queen at 90. That's the one. I'm sure that's the one. There were lots. But the one where they watched the home movies was the best, in my opinion, because it showed the Queen and her personality. Kat says there is a very short scene from a documentary that the Queen did in the 60s. That's the one that I don't think has been seen since. The Queen allowed the BBC to air it once, and I think she deemed it a bit of a mistake to let the cameras in, and she made sure that the BBC never ever showed it ever again. And there are very few clips of it on the internet. There are a few, but not the whole thing. Jamie says the Queen will never remarry. Philip has been her strength and stay. I completely agree, and I don't think she will ever remarry if Philip goes before her. Steve says, I know it's morbid, but I would like to look in Henry VIII's vault. Apparently his skeleton still has a ginger beard and hair. Now, again, that is something that I tried to look for a couple of years ago now. I tried to see if ever he was exhumed, you know, or were their photographs taken? I think he was exhumed once, I think in the 1700s, and they made notes, but there was no pictures, there was no photography then. But I would really be interested to have a look too. I know it's really morbid, but I would like to see what was in there and what clothes he was wearing, if he was buried with any artifacts, what his skeleton looks like, what his hair was like, is it still there? Another one I'd love to see is Elizabeth I. I mean, wouldn't that be so interesting to open it and be the first person to look at her in all those years? It's morbid, but it's fascinating. Jen says, I've been to Princess Diana's exhibition in Connecticut. That must have been a dress one. Freya says, I agree, Steve, Charles is also in there, so I'd be interested to see his head detached. Oh my goodness. Oh yes, of course, Charles I. Sorry, I read that wrong. Yes, Charles I, who had his head off. That would be interesting to see too. Oh, by the way, there was one video I stumbled across. It's on YouTube somewhere. It was a Princess Diana lookalike competition from, I think, 1983 or something, and that was very interesting. The lady that won the competition was really quite convincing, and she was American. Okay, Kat says, the Queen is sitting at the table with Charles, Anne and Philip talking about a gorilla or an ape. It's called Royal Family Documentary 1969. That's the one that was only shown once. Elaine says, I have forgotten about the condolences card I was sent by Mr. Alfired. I just have to wait till my son is ready to help me so that I can tweet it to you. I'm not that good with technology. Don't worry, whenever you get the chance, just tweet it. I would love to see it. Freya says, do you think they will air the documentary again? Not while the Queen is still alive, no. Or indeed Prince Philip. Steve says, glad it's not just me. Freya. Noreen says, the Queen's real love wasn't Prince Philip. Who was it? Fuzzy Bucket says, do you think Charles will follow the Queen's example and not grant interviews once he is king? No, I think he's given interviews as Prince of Wales, so therefore, I mean, he may take a different position once he's king, but I have a feeling he may do something. Will says, I liked Porchy. I still don't think Porchy, the Duke of, was it Portland? I don't think he was the true love. I think it's always been Philip. Jamie sent me a tweet. I will look in a second. Noreen says there are rumours that Porchy is Andrew's father. I don't think so. And Jen says, is it true that Princess Diana has a daughter? No, and I know the story you mean. We spoke about it last week, and I think that's completely made up fake news. Jamie says, I hope Charles doesn't do interviews when he's on the throne. I have a feeling he might, though. Elaine says, who was it then, Noreen? I haven't heard of anyone else apart from Philip being her true love. I think Noreen did mean the Duke of, well, Porchy, as he's known, as he was referred to in The Crown. And Noreen says, yes, her name is Sarah. No, I don't believe that she is. In fact, I think that was actually a Photoshop person, because have you ever seen an interview with this real Sarah? I know I haven't. Okay, Jamie says, my aunt showed me her extensive Diana collection, and this is a tweet. Wow, she has lots of books and stamps, I can see, collector's books. So yes, if you want to see the picture, head over to my Royal Reviewer on Twitter. That looks an amazing collection. What else did she have in it? Stephen says, what did you think of how Earl Spencer treated Diana after her divorce from Charles? I understand she asked to stay in a cottage on the Orford estate, and her brother declined. Yes, he basically led her on. He said that she could, and she was really looking forward to having an escape from London, a retreat. But then he pulled out at the last minute and said no. And I know that she was very upset, and she didn't speak to him for a while. I did think it was rather cruel, and I couldn't really see why he couldn't let her have the cottage. So yeah, I do think it was a bit mean, and I bet he wishes that he'd said yes now, in hindsight. Okay, Shatter says, I need to go. I have work tomorrow. Love, love, love your videos. Thank you very much, and have a good day at work tomorrow. Annette says, who was the king whose skeleton was found under the car park? Oh yes, that was amazing. I can't believe this lady, I forget her name, she had a hunch, the Richard III, and she runs the Richard III Society, and she had a hunch about where he would be, and it was a complete, you know, tarmacked car park, and she went over to the spot and said, dig there. They dug there, and they found him. It was almost like she knew exactly where he was. Coincidence or not, who knows? Anyway, they found him under the car park, and they noticed that he had a curvature of the spine, which is what Richard III was said to have. He was said to be a humpback, and scoliosis would give you that curvature of the spine and a sort of humped look. So it was him. They exhumed him from the ground, analysed him, and then reburied him. It was all very interesting, and you know, I just couldn't believe that she just said, dig here, and he was there. And Steve said the Duke of Porchester, that was the one. Earl of Carnarvon is Port, and then comes from the subsidiary title, Lord Porchester. Jen says, you all from the UK. I'm from the UK. But no, we have viewers from America, from Australia, from Canada, from all over. And Steve says, thanks for responding. That's okay. I will answer as many questions as I can. It is getting close to when I'm thinking about drawing this chat session to a close. But I'm going to take a few more questions because it's so interesting. Jamie says she had the original print of the famous books on Diana. She had stamps from North Korea dated 1981 and the famous newspapers. Wow, that must have been so interesting to go through that history. Freya says, I'm a member of the Richard III Society. He's a deeply misunderstood king. I think people are becoming aware of that now. Fuzzy Puppet says, I thought Margaret Rhodes said the Queen only had eyes for Prince Philip. I definitely think there's not been another love apart from Philip. And of course, Jamie's from Ireland, Jen from America, Will saying goodbye, bye Will. Thanks for joining us. Dawn says the cottage issue is probably something that keeps Charles up all night. I think he probably would deeply regret that. And yes, Richard III was discovered under a car park. And Dawn is from Orlando in Canada. Okay, so I am going to draw tonight's chat to a close. We've had such interesting, amazing questions again. I'm always really, you know, I always come on here knowing that we're all going to ask me, you know, really interesting questions and things that I already have on my list. I have always bring a list with me just in case. But I know you always go through all the questions that I've already put, all the points I've got on my list. So thank you again for another amazing chat. And oh, there was one thing I want to say quickly before I go. I won't be here 1 week in the future. I did make a note of it about when exactly that would be. So there will be no live chat. I'm giving you a few weeks notice of this. There will be no live chat on Saturday, the 8th of April. I am busy that day. I have some prior engagements that I have to attend to. So no chat on the 8th of April. So just thought I'd let you know, and I'll mention it next week and as well. So all that's left for me to do for this week is to say, from me in Shropshire, goodbye.